Hello guys, welcome back. I am Ashish and today we'll be starting with a new module, that is Administrative Thought, that is module 2 of our UPSC Public Administration paper 1. And since this is a new module, I will be creating a new playlist for that, and link for that playlist would be again in the description. Also, as always, I would request you, if this is the first video you are watching, to stop right now, because I will be definitely using the terms and definitions which I have already dealt with in my previous sessions. So please go ahead and watch module 1 first, all the videos of module 1 in order, watch them first and then come back to this session. Links for the same again would be in the description of this video. Also, you can now again download this PPT, link for the same would be in the description again. So continuing with our module 2, this, as you can see, is the syllabus as given to us by UPSC, and it contains of scientific management and scientific management movement, which we will study today, F.W. Taylor and scientific management movement. Other thing is classical theory. It consists of various thinkers like Henry Fayol, Gulick and Urwig, Mooney and Riley. And next is Max Weber and his ideal bureaucratic model. Next is Mary Parker Foley. Another is Elton Mayo and other human relations school thinkers. Next one is Chester Bernard. Another is Herbert Simon and his decision making theory, and then participative management by Francis Likert, Chris Argyris and Douglas McGregor. Moving ahead with our today's topic, that is F.W. Taylor and Taylorism. Taylorism is nothing but scientific management movement. Scientific management movement is also known as Taylorism. So we'll learn about F.W. Taylor and Taylorism today. So introduction. This theory came in the wake of new industrial revolution of the late 19th century. Now what is new industrial revolution? If you do not know about this, these are the phases of industrial revolution. New industrial revolution is the second phase of industrial revolution. What currently right now is going on is fourth industrial revolution, industrial revolution 4.0. If you do not know about this, please google it. It is very important because fourth industrial revolution has been in news in 2016 and it will be in news for coming years also. So first industrial revolution, as you must know, it dealt with introduction of machines in the lives of people, be it manufacture of clothes or steam engines or whatever. There were new machines introduced and lives of people got better and the lives got automated in the second phase of industrial revolution. Now the first phase of industrial revolution lasted from 1760 to mid 1800s to 1820 or 1840. You must know this, you have studied this in world history. If not, you will study this in world history. So first phase of industrial revolution lasted from 1760s to 1820s or 1840s. From 1850s, you know, the late 19th century, from 1850s the second phase of industrial revolution started, which is also known as technological revolution. This is what we are talking about here in new industrial revolution. The second phase focused more on mass production. The first phase was introduction of machines in the lives of people, right? The second phase dealt with mass production of things. Then came the third industrial revolution, which dealt with digital platform and internet and all those things. It is also known as digital revolution. And now in today's times we are living in the fourth phase of industrial revolution. Please google about it if you do not know about it. There is a concept of internet of things which is at the center of fourth industrial revolution. Internet of things deals with integration of all the aspects of your life, integration of all the smart devices, television, cars and all the electronics. Everything is integrated. This is known as internet of things, IoT or internet of things is at the center of fourth industrial revolution, that is in the age that we are living in today. So this theory, the scientific management approach or Taylorism or F.W. Taylor's theory, came in the wake of second phase of industrial revolution or the new industrial revolution or the technological industrial revolution of the late 19th century, which dealt with mass production of things. Okay, so scientific management approach is an attempt to solve the problems of complex organizations that have emerged as a result of industrial development. So industrial development हुआ था first phase of industrial revolution में. As a result of that, complex organizations had emerged, new factories, new industries had emerged. So scientific management approach was an attempt to solve the problems of these industries and factories which had emerged due to industrial revolution. F.W. Taylor or Frederick Winslow Taylor is the pioneer of scientific management approach. He is also known as the father of scientific management. Now in future slides we will see that before Taylor there were some works on scientific management already done, but still we call Taylor as father of scientific management. We will learn about that in future slides. So as of now, F.W. Taylor is called as the father of of scientific management. Also, the reasons for growth of scientific management movement were many. Like second phase of industrial revolution, as I've already told you, there was something called as soldiering phenomenon. We'll learn about this in future slides. There is something called as soldiering phenomenon. This was one of the reasons of the growth of scientific management movement or Taylorism. There were bitter labor management conflicts. There were strikes happening. There were differences between labor and management. So there were bitter labor management conflicts. There was no standardized technique and procedure for anything. There was lack of emphasis on personal management. Now, what is personal management? Now, understand something. Personal management is different from human resource development. Many people confuse this, but human resource development is a much wider concept. Human resource development deals with development of the character of a person, development of the human resource as such, and personal management basically deals with hire and fire techniques. So you hire people and you fire people is nothing but personal management. There was lack of cooperation between whom? Between workers and management. So there was lack of cooperation. There was a kind of fear psychosis that anytime you can be fired from your job. So there was a kind of fear psychosis. There was no scientific technique for hiring and firing. So there was a fear psychosis. These were the reasons that the scientific management movement grew. Moving ahead, history of F.W. Taylor. Taylor was basically an engineer. So he began his career as an apprentice in a small machinery making shop in Philadelphia, and then he rose to the position of chief engineer in Midway Steel Company. In 1893 he opened his own office in New York, and he was working as a consulting engineer. Basically he was an engineer, so he created some tools for increasing the production in the industries. As you already know that this was the second phase of industrial revolution, so mass production was in vogue. So as an engineer he created certain tools which increased this production in the factories and industries. So some of the tools he created were cutting tool, heat treating tool, steel hammer, hydraulic power loading machinery, boring and turing mills. So all these tools he created. Basically F.W. Taylor was an engineer. That is all you have to know about him. History of scientific management now. F.W. Taylor was not the originator of this theory, as I have already said this in my previous slide. F.W. Taylor is called the father of scientific management, but he was not the originator of this theory. There was work done before him. Actually there was work done almost 100 years before him. So what was the history of scientific management? Charles Babbage. You must have heard this name in schools. Whenever you learn about computers, the first thing you learn is Charles Babbage. He was the person who almost originated the idea of the modern computer. So apart from that, he also gave us the first ideas of scientific management. We will learn about him now. Charles Babbage is a mathematician and an engineer also. He was also an engineer. Charles Babbage is a mathematician, and he studied many factories methods for building a prototype, and he gave us some principles, and these principles, as you can see, these principles closely resemble the principles of scientific management. So almost 100 years before F.W. Taylor gave his theory of scientific management, there was Charles Babbage who gave some principles. These principles closely resembled the principles of scientific management. There was another person called as Henry Town. He tried to develop a unified system of management, and he called his new philosophy science of management, and Taylor was inspired by Henry Town's ideas. It was Henry Town who inspired Taylor to carry on his research. Prominent leaders like Henry Metcalfe and Frederick Halsey also developed and used some scientific management methods and techniques. So as you can see, this is the history of scientific management. Before Taylor, there were many people like Charles Babbage, Henry Town, Henry Metcalfe, Frederick Halsey. These people have already worked on scientific management in some form or the other. The term scientific management was first coined by Louis Brandeis in 1910. As you can see, it was not F.W. Taylor who even coined the term. The term was coined by Louis Brandeis in 1910. The term scientific management was not even coined by F.W. Taylor. Taylor was initially opposed to this phrase. He was opposed to this term scientific management. जो term जो coin हुआ था 1910 में, Taylor was initially opposed to this phrase, thinking that it sounded too academic. But later he used it as the title of one of his works. So initially he was opposed to using the term scientific management, but later he used this as a title of one of his work. In the earlier days, Taylor used to refer to his techniques as the task system or task management. उसके बाद he used to call his work as scientific management, which then catched on. Later Taylor welcomed the more appealing nomenclature. As you can see, initially he was opposed to the term scientific management, and later he welcomed the more appealing nomenclature of scientific management, and he also declared declared that best management is a true science resting upon clearly defined laws, rules and principles. So this should give you a clear idea, at least a basic idea of what scientific management actually is. It is nothing but clearly defined laws, rules and principles, some principles which are derived at after scientific discussions, and we use these rules and principles in management, in managing the people. So best management is nothing but a true science. One crux of scientific management, if you have to take away, is finding the one best way of doing anything. This was what F.W. Taylor focused on, finding one best way of doing any task. Be it any task, there is always one best way of doing it, and you have to find that one best way, and it is the task of management to find that one best way and asking the employees to follow that one best way. So this is nothing but scientific management. So coming back to our topic, in the history of scientific management, you can see that before Taylor there were many people who have worked on scientific management. Scientific management as a term was not even coined by F.W. Taylor, but still we call him the father of scientific management. Why is this so? Though the term was not coined by Taylor, and though he was not the first to come up with these techniques, it was Taylor who used the term to give a complete and systematic explanation of scientific methods and techniques for promoting the organizational efficiency and economy. As we have already discussed, those were the times where the focus was on increasing the efficiency of organizations. So for increasing or promoting the organizational efficiency, it was Taylor who gave scientific management, the term scientific management, a complete meaning. He defined it in proper, in depth, and he gave a systematic explanation for it, and that is why we call him a father of scientific management. Even though before him there were many people who used the idea and coined the terms, we do not call them the father. We call F.W. Taylor as the father of scientific management because he is the one who made it complete. Hence he came to be known as the father of scientific management. SM is the short form of scientific management. I will be using SM from here on in all the slides. So he came to be known as the father of scientific management, and scientific management is also known as Taylorism. So coming to F.W. Taylor and his books and his writings, as we already know, UPSC has a trend of asking name of the books. For example, UPSC has already asked in 2015 about Dwight Waldo and his book. They said that Dwight Waldo wrote this book, and you had to discuss what Dwight Waldo said in the book. So basically you do not have to remember the names of any of his works. Whatever work UPSC wants you, they will quote in the question. They will tell in the question that this is the book by F.W. Taylor, discuss it. So you do not have to remember the names of the book, but you might have to remember what he discussed in those books. But this, in case of F.W. Taylor, is pretty simple because the names of the book are related to his techniques. He suggested some techniques. For example, piece rate system is a technique he suggested. We'll learn about piece rate system in our future slides. So name of one of his books is A Piece Rate System. So for example, in UPSC, if UPSC asks you that Taylor wrote this book, A Piece Rate System, and discuss what he wrote in this book, so you simply have to discuss his technique of piece rate system. The principles of scientific management, in this book he discussed the principles of scientific management. So basically you do not have to remember any of his works, you just need to remember what he stood for, what F.W. Taylor proposed. So that is all you need to know. So in brief, if we have to touch upon his books, in A Piece Rate System he propounded three basic principles. So what is basically a piece rate system we will discuss in our future slides in detail. In brief, here we will study observation of work through time study to complete the work and to determine the standard rate of completion of work. So what you have to basically do is, you have a task and you have to observe how much time it is taking to complete the task. This is the first principle in the piece rate system. The book A Piece Rate System that he propounded, first principle is that whatever task you have, you observe the time taken to complete that task. Differential rate system for completing piecework. For example, if you achieved 80% of that task, you will get this much pay. If you achieved 100% of that task, you will get this much pay. And if you achieve more than 100% of that task, you will get more bonus. So there would be differential rate system for completing piecework. So payment to men and not to positions. What this means is, if there are two people on same position, there should be payment to the person who is giving more output at the same position and not to the other person who is giving less output. These were the three principles that he propounded in A Piece Rate System, and this we'll learn in detail in future slides, so do not worry about this. This is just a brief idea of his books. So on his article on shop management. As you can see in 1903 he gave us an article of shop management. Before discussing shop management, what you have to understand is, in those times, in the times of late 19th century, the second phase of industrial revolution, there were no multinational companies like Infosys or Accenture or IT companies. There were factories and industries. Okay, so in those factories and industries there were a clear cut demarcation among managers and workers. So what managers were, they were the management, and what workers were, they were called as the shop floor, they were called as the workshop or the shop management. So these are the terms which relate to the workers, the lowest level of any factory or industries of those times. You have to remember that. So in his article on shop management, he focused basically on organization and management of workshop as against management of the managers. Okay, so this is concerned with the management of the workshop, the workers. He dealt about the need to maintain low production unit cost, so cost of producing each unit should be low. So he dealt about need of maintaining low production unit cost, and he dealt about many things. We'll deal about this in future slides. Applying scientific methods, as you can see, applying scientific methods of research, standardization of work conditions. We'll deal about all this in future slides. So basically in shop management he dealt with efficient management of the workshop, of the shop floor level, not the managers. Okay, so moving ahead, as we already have a basic idea of what scientific management is, right? So how it became a movement, how it got converted into Taylorism. What scientific management is nothing but applying scientific rules and principles in managing people. Okay, that is nothing but scientific management. Finding one best way of doing job, that is scientific management. How did it convert into a movement? How did it transform itself into Taylorism? We'll see that in this slide. Very soon Taylor became very popular. His close associates like Henry Gantt, Frank Gilbreth and Lillian Gilbreth, and these such associates carried out further research. So it was not just Taylor, it was also his associates and his followers like Henry Gantt and Gilbreths. They carried out further research in this area and they published many articles and books much after Taylor. So many followers of Taylor were there, and they also served as advisors to hundreds of companies, and that is how it became a movement. His followers became advisors of hundreds of companies and they started propagating Taylor's idea. So that is how scientific management became a movement. Engineering schools began to give courses on shop management and industrial management. Schools of business administration also started giving courses in these areas. Many special disciplines rooted in scientific management have emerged. In brief, scientific management became a movement. Scientific management movement, SMM, stands for Scientific Management Movement, offered the hope of resolving industrial problems through the use of objective principles. As we have already seen, that was the time of mass production, second phase of industrial revolution. So there were some industrial problems. What those problems were, we have seen that in reasons of the growth of scientific management, there were labor management conflicts, there were no standardized principles. So these were problems of those industries of those times. So scientific management movement helped in resolving those industrial problems through the use of objective and scientific rules and principles. It had a tremendous effect on industrial practices in the US. The movement soon became international and spread to Germany, France, Sweden and other European countries. हर जगह फैल गया. It spread to everywhere, and in US it had a great impact on industrial practices. Its greatest success, however, was in Russia. Now we'll deal about its success in Russia and Japan in future slides in more detail, but as of now, in brief, what happened was in 1917, immediately after Bolshevik Revolution. Bolshevik Revolution you will learn in world history. If you have not yet, you will definitely learn about it in world history. So immediately after Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, Lenin welcomed Taylor's ideas to Russia. He referred to Taylor's system as a combination of subtle brutality of bourgeois exploitation and a number of its greatest scientific achievements. Now this word, okay, I'll explain this statement. Now this word bourgeois is a French word. It's pronounced as bourgeois. Now bourgeois has two meanings. One is the basic French meaning of middle class, where it means middle class people who are conservative people, middle class people, and another meaning is given by Marxist theory. Karl Marx was a theorist who gave us the ideas of socialism and communism. So Karl Marx gave us another meaning of the term bourgeois. He says that bourgeois means capitalist class. If you do not know about capitalism and socialism, do not worry, you will learn learn about it in word history, and also in public administration paper 1 in one of the modules there is a topic called state theories. So in state theories you will learn about capitalism, communism, socialism, everything, so do not worry about that. So while studying socialism you will learn that Karl Marx, when he gave the idea of socialism, he gave a meaning to this term bourgeois. He said that bourgeois means capitalist class, and capitalist class always exploits the poor people. So when Lenin welcomed Taylor's ideas, he said that Taylorism or scientific management is a combination of this bourgeois exploitation, the exploitation by capitalist class. Scientific management is actually an exploitation by capitalist class. It is a combination of this exploitation and a number of its greatest scientific achievements, and that is why he welcomed it to Russia. That is why he welcomed scientific management to Russia, because it had a number of greatest scientific achievements instead of it having a feature of exploitation by capitalist class. So in 1917, immediately after Bolshevik Revolution, Lenin welcomed Taylor's techniques to Russia. He referred to Taylor's system as a combination of subtle brutality of bourgeois exploitation and a number of its greatest scientific achievements. During Stalin's era, after Lenin there was Joseph Stalin who came to power. So during Stalin's era there was a movement called as Stakhanovite movement. We'll learn about this in future slides. So Stakhanovite movement is a biggest legacy of scientific management movement. We are in this slide we are learning about the spread of the movement, right? So this is how this movement spread in other countries. In Russia it was welcomed by Lenin, and during Stalin's time it spread as Stakhanovite movement. We'll learn about it in future slides. So this is how Taylorism took its roots. Curriculum, again in Russia, curriculum of education and training of engineers who subsequently became managers in Soviet industry. So there were basically, like in US there were engineering school giving courses on shop management and industrial management. In Russia also there was a curriculum of education and training of engineers. So this is how scientific management became a movement. It spread all over the world, all over Europe, all over Russia, Japan, everywhere. It became a movement. It got transformed into Taylorism because of his followers, his advisors, and different countries which adopted Taylor's ideas. So in the very first slide of introduction we had seen that there was a reason for scientific management movement rise, and one of those reasons was soldiering phenomenon. So what is this soldiering phenomenon? We'll learn about in this slide. Taylor observed that a phenomenon of workers purposely operating below their capacity, and he called it as soldiering or skiving of work. Soldiering phenomenon or skiving of work. So workers purposely operated well below their capacity. Those of you who are working professionals who are working in IT industries might relate with this more, that workers purposely operate well below their capacity, and this is nothing but soldierism. And Taylor gave us 3 reasons for it. He attributed soldiering to 3 causes, and the first one is workers believed that if they became more productive, fewer of them would be needed and jobs would be eliminated. Now understand something, those were not the times of IT industries and multinational corporations. Those were the times of industries and factories. So in factories and industries what happens is, if it is observed that same work can be done by less people, a particular amount of people would be fired. So workers believed that if they became more productive, fewer of them would be needed and jobs would then be eliminated, unemployment would rise. So that is why workers purposely operated well below their capacity. This is the first reason. Second reason was non-incentive wage systems encouraged low productivity. Non-incentive wage system means if you do good work there were no rewards for you. So there was non-incentive wage system which encouraged low productivity. Employees take great care never to work at high pace for fear that this faster pace would become the new standard. Very simply, do not raise your expectations in the eyes of your boss, in the eyes of your manager. So if you raise your expectations, your managers will expect more of you the next time. Employees fear that their per unit pay will decrease if the quantity increases. There was non-incentive wage system. So if they increase the quantity of their output, they are actually getting less pay because same pay would be applicable for a lower standard. So if they increase the standard, they are actually getting less pay per unit. So there was a non-incentive wage system and employees did not want to raise the expectations in the eyes of their boss. Third reason was workers waste much of their time and effort by relying on rule of thumb methods. What are rule of thumb methods? Which are grounded in tradition and experience rather than on scientific calculation and scientific discussions. So there are these rule of thumb methods. For example, in one of the factories there might be a rule of thumb method that no new work will be taken up on any Friday. in your family there might be a rule of thumb that you do not eat non-vegetarian food on Saturdays, or you do not eat vegetarian food on all days. So rule of thumb methods actually deviate from person to person, company to company, organization to organization, and they are basically based on each owns common sense and tradition and practice rather than on scientific calculations and discussions. Rule of thumb methods are basically tradition derived. So workers waste much of their time and effort by relying on rule of thumb methods rather than on those determined scientifically, because scientifically determined rules would be much more efficient and workers do not use that. This was the one of the reason of soldiering, because time has been wasted in relying on rule of thumb methods. To counter soldiering phenomenon and to improve efficiency, Taylor began to conduct experiments to determine the best level of performance for certain jobs and what was necessary to achieve this performance. So what happened was, Taylor identified this soldiering phenomenon and he said that there is a need to counter this soldiering phenomenon and there is a need to improve efficiency. So what he did was, he began to conduct experiments. He began to conduct experiments in his own company and in different companies. We'll learn about his experiments in future slides. So he began to conduct experiments to determine the best level of performance for certain jobs. He said that there is a one best way to do every kind of job and there is a one best level of performance by every worker. So he set out to determine these best level of performances and these best ways of doing the job, and that is how he said that we would counter the soldiering phenomenon. So this is all about soldiering phenomenon you need to know. Continuing forward with our lectures, Taylor on deficiencies of prevailing management system. Management of those times had no clear understanding of worker management responsibilities. What this means is, there are some responsibilities that are to be handled by workers, there are some responsibilities that are to be handled by management, and these are to be determined by management. Management or managers determine that what responsibilities workers will take and what responsibilities we will take. So management on itself had no clear understanding of these worker management responsibilities. This was one of the deficiencies of management systems of those times. Lack of effective standards of work. There was no effective standards of work. That was one of the deficiencies. Lack of job clarity, which promotes soldiering of work. Because there is no job clarity, workers do not know what they are working for, what is their target and output of the day. So there is a lack of job clarity, and that is what promotes the soldiering of the work. This is one of the deficiencies. And because of soldiering of work, there is restricted output. What is soldiering? Workers work below their capacity, so obviously there is restricted output. The output is not achieved at the maximum level, and this is because of soldiering of work. This is one of the deficiencies. Failure of management to offer proper incentives to workers to overcome the soldiering. There is no proper incentives or rewards if you do greater amount of work. So that was a non-incentive kind of wage system which was prevalent in those days. So this was also one of the deficiencies. Most decisions of the management were unscientific, as they were based on hunch, intuition, past experience and rule of thumb. As you have already seen, past experience and rule of thumb methods were used by management which were unscientific. Lack of proper studies about division of work among departments. So there was no proper division of work among departments. What this caused was overlapping of works. Placement of workers without consideration of their ability, aptitude and interest. So ability of workers were not considered while placing them to do a certain kind of job. So these were all the deficiencies of management system of those times as given by F.W. Taylor. Now, having dealt with the basic idea of scientific management, we now know what scientific management is. It is applying scientific rules and principles in managing people. So scientific management and also finding one best way of doing every job. So this is the basic crux of scientific management. Having dealt with that, we will now go in detail, in depth of scientific management approach. What basically scientific management approach is. So the context is, according to Taylor, scientific management is the art of knowing what you want your men to do and then see that you do it in the most efficient manner. So first of all, you must be aware of what you want to achieve. There should be a proper output, a target of you want to achieve, and you should know that what you want your men to achieve, and then you should be capable enough to see that your men, your workers do it in the most efficient manner. This is the context of scientific management. This is what Taylor said. As scientific management management approach was developed in the early phases of industrial revolution, as we have already seen. The second phase of industrial revolution was when the scientific management was developed. So it was developed in the early phases of industrial revolution. It tried to address some of the problems of industrial society. That was an industrial society back then, so there were some problems in that industrial society. So scientific management approach, what it did was it tried to address some of these problems of industrial society. The basic concerns of industrial society were to improve efficiency, to reduce the cost of production, and to increase the profits. These were the basic concerns of society of those times. Efficiency बढ़ाओ, profits बढ़ाओ, and cost of production कम करो. This can be achieved through two-pronged strategy. There are two ways to achieve this increase of profits and increase of efficiency. First way is improving the technology and the techniques of work along with efficient management of workers, and second way is expansion of market to the new colonies. Now F.W. Taylor was trying to address the first concern and not the second concern. Taylor was not concerned with expansion of market to new colonies, he was concerned with improving the technology, and by improving the technology he tried to improve the efficiency and increase the profits. He tried to improve the technology and techniques of work along with efficient management of workers. Taylor was trying to address the first concern of industrial society. Hence he emphasized more on scientific knowledge of doing things and scientific way of managing organization. There should be scientific rules to manage people, scientific way of managing organizations. I hope you are understanding all this. The context, again continuing, according to Taylor, as we have seen in the very first slide also, according to Taylor, he said that management is a true science resting upon clearly defined laws, rules and principles. So there should be scientifically and clearly defined laws, rules, principles, and that is what management is. Management is managing through these scientific rules. The same principles, he said that the same principles could be applied with equal force to all social activities, be it management of our homes, management of our farm, management of our church, management of our business, our institutions, our universities, our government departments. He said that the principles, the scientific rules, the scientifically defined laws and principles remained same, and these could be applied in every field and every aspect of our life with equal force. This is what Taylor said regarding scientific management. Scientific management was concerned with application of scientific methods, as we have already seen, to managerial practices. Scientific methods को apply करो कहाँ पे? Managerial practices में and production processes in industrial organizations. You have to understand something, that Taylorism basically is dealing with industries and factories. So he is basically concerned with such engineering factories and industries. So his basic concern was industrial organization. As we will see in future slides, there is a concept of Neo-Taylorism. Neo-Taylorism deals with application of Taylor's ideas in every other aspect, not only in industries but in every other aspects, even public organizations. So coming back to Taylorism, Taylor basically deals with only industries and factories, only in industrial organizations. It focused on the lowest level, the shop floor of organization. As we have already seen this in one of our previous slides, his basic concern was the shop floor. What was the shop floor? It was something as opposed to the managers. There were two levels of workers in industries and factories of those times. One was managers or management, and another one was workers, and workers were also known as the shop floor. So shop floor was the concern or the focus of F.W. Taylor. So he focused on lowest level or the shop floor of the organization. Taylor believed that all work processes could be separated into units. He basically dealt with division of work. He said that all work processes could be separated into units, and efficiency of each unit could be tested and improved upon using scientific techniques. He said that first divide the work into separate units, and then each unit could be improved upon. So efficiency of each unit can be improved, and the overall efficiency will thus increase. So this is what Taylor said about division of work. These techniques could be extended upwards in the organization so that it becomes rational and efficient. He said that divide the work on the shop floor. You should divide the work into separate units, increase its efficiency, and these techniques then could be extended upwards in the organization so that it becomes rational and efficient. Now there were some basic assumptions that Taylor took, some 4 basic assumptions. We will see what those 4 basic assumptions are. First assumption is Taylor assumed that there is one best way of doing every job. This is the first assumption that Taylor made. He said that there is one best way of doing every job. Management's role is to lay down standards of work. Organizational functioning can be improved by adopting scientific methods is the second assumption. He said that scientific methods after adoption will increase the organizational functioning. A third assumption he made was a good worker is one who does not initiate action but follows orders of the management. He said that only work of worker was to follow the order of management. He should not apply his own brain, he should not apply his own mind in working. Whatever management tells him to do, he should do that. It is the third assumption of Taylor. Fourth assumption was every worker is an economic man, that is, he is motivated by monetary factors, only by money. He is not motivated by social factors, he is not motivated by friends, his family, his society. He is not motivated by any other factor, any other psychological factor, not any factor, only money. Every worker is an economic man. This is the fourth and final assumption of F.W. Taylor. He gave us a economic man concept. So moving ahead, scientific management has four basic principles. We have dealt with everything that is to deal with scientific management. We will now deal with four basic principles of scientific management. Taylor gave us these four basic principles to overcome the deficiencies in management. We have seen this in previous slides. Taylor discussed some deficiencies of the prevailing management systems of those times. So Taylor gave us these four new principles to overcome those deficiencies. The first principle is development of a true science of work. What is this means is develop a science for each element of man's work. There is one best way of doing every job, so you should develop a science for each element of man's work. Find out the one best way of doing that job. If it is known as to what constitutes a fair day's work, the worker is saved from the unnecessary criticism of the boss. We have seen this in our previous slides. Job clarity leads to soldiering phenomenon, the minds of the workers of those days. So what Taylor says that if it is known to the worker, if it is known as to what constitutes a fair day's work, if there is job clarity in his mind, if he knows what constitutes a fair day's work, the worker is saved from the unnecessary criticism of the boss. There will be less chances that he will be criticized by his boss because now he knows what he has to achieve. There is clarity about his job in his own mind, so there will be less of unnecessary criticism, and also it enables the management to get the maximum work from that worker. This needs a scientific investigation of a large daily task. If you have to achieve this, it requires a scientific investigation of a large daily task. Whatever daily task you have, you need to scientifically investigate it. Scientifically investigation is to be done by the qualified workers under optimum conditions. This can be done by gathering traditional knowledge of the workers. Now workers as on their own have some traditional knowledge of the craft. Those were the industries and factories that the workers worked in, so they had some background, some heritage, some tradition that they have already worked in, so they have some traditional knowledge. So while investigating the task given to workers, you should always try to gather the traditional knowledge of the workers which they have achieved through heritage and tradition. The results of the scientific investigation have to be classified, tabulated and reduced into rules and laws to find out the ideal working methods, or what is called as the one best way of doing job. So what basically this means is a worker should know what a fair day's work is. A worker should have his job clarity, and for achieving job clarity for the worker, there should be a scientific investigation of the task given to workers. Okay, and the results of this investigation have to be classified, they have to be properly tabulated, they have to be reduced into rules and laws, and after these results have been properly classified, you find out the ideal working methods, or what is called as the one best way. Such development of science of work enables the organization to produce more. Productivity will increase, efficiency will increase, and it also enables the worker to receive higher wages, because now Taylor suggests that it will no longer be a non-incentive wage system, it will be replaced by an incentive wage system. So when a worker achieves more, he will be paid more. So it enables the worker to receive higher wages and a much larger profit to the company. So company will also profit in the longer run. This is the first principle, develop a true science of work, or find out the one best way of doing every job. First principle is development of true science of work. Moving on to our second principle, scientific selection and progressive development of workmen. Now you have developed a true science of work, you have found out the one best way of doing work. Now you need workers for that, right? So in selecting workers you have to be scientific selection of workmen and progressive development of workmen. We'll see what it means. To ensure effective performance of scientifically developed work, the first principle, scientifically developed work. Okay, so to ensure effective performance of that first principle, scientifically developed work, there is a need to select the workers on scientific basis. You have to attach this word scientific everywhere in any sentence. Develop a true science of work, scientifically select workers, scientifically develop workers, and you have to attach this word scientific in every term. So you have to select the workers on scientific basis. It is the duty of management to study the character, nature and performance of each worker with a view to finding out his limitations and possibilities for his development. So what is the work of management? It is studying the worker in detail, studying the character of worker, studying the nature of worker, performance of worker, each worker, studying each workman in their company in detail is the duty of management. And why should they study each worker in detail? To find out his limitations, because when you study the worker in detail you find out his limitations and you also get the possibilities for his development. So it is the work of the management to study each and every worker in detail. Taylor believed that every worker has potentialities for development. Every worker can be developed. Every worker must be systematically and thoroughly trained. Scientific selection involves selecting a right person for the right job. This is very important, a right person for the right job. According to Taylor, now I'll read out this sentence and I'll explain what it means. According to Taylor, one of the very first requirements of the worker who is fit to handle the pig iron as a regular occupation is that he shall be stupid and so phlegmatic that he more nearly resembles in his mental makeup the ox rather than any other type. So what he means is, if you are selecting a worker to handle pig iron. Now what is pig iron? Pig iron is a kind of raw material which is used in manufacture of iron. It has been given a proper oblong shape. So if you Google pig iron, you will know what pig iron is. So what Taylor says is, if you are selecting a worker to handle pig iron, he should be so stupid and so phlegmatic that he should be almost equal to an ox, and he should not be equal to a human being. Now this is a kind of an insult, but you have to understand what he's saying here, that there is a work for each type of man. There is no type of work however that suits all type of men. What this means is, for example, you take a great musician like A.R. Rahman. If you put him in a IT industry and you expect him to write codes and program applications, he will not be able to do it in the best of his way, because his heart is not into it, right? He is more into music than into coding and programming. Every man is made for a particular kind of work, but not every work is made for every kind of man. So this is what he means by this above statement, that a person who is more intellectually superior might not be a proper fit to handle pig iron, and a person who is handling pig iron might be a proper fit if he mentally resembles a lesser intellectual level than the person who is above him. So basically everything boils down to selecting a right person for a right job. This is what scientific selection means. It is also necessary to ensure that the employee accepts the new methods, tools and conditions willingly and enthusiastically. And this is why it is important to select the right person for right job, because after all, at the end of the day, the employee should also accept the new methods. If you are putting someone into coding and programming, he should willingly and enthusiastically accept programming as a way of his life. So it is also necessary to ensure that the employee accepts the new methods, tools and conditions willingly and enthusiastically. This is why it is important to select a right person for the right job. There should be opportunities for advancement after you have scientifically selected the person, as mentioned in the above points. After you have scientifically selected the person, there should be opportunities for advancements for that person to do the job to the fullest realization of his capabilities. So to realize the fullest capability of a person, you need to train him. So you have to develop him progressively. This is the second principle, scientific selection and progressive development of workmen. Moving on to our third principle, bringing together of science of work and scientifically selected workers. Science of work was our first principle and scientifically selected workers was our second principle. Third principle is bringing together of both principles. we'll look into it in detail. Taylor says that you may develop all the science that you please, and you may scientifically select and train workmen just as much as you please, but unless someone brings the science and workmen together, all your labor will be lost. So he says that even if you have achieved first principle, even you have achieved second principle completely, unless and until you bring these two principles together, all of your labor will be lost. So it is not just important to select the work scientifically and select this workman scientifically, you have to combine these two. This is what his third principle deals with. To enable the worker to do his job and to ensure that he may not slip back to the earlier methods of doing work, there must be somebody to inspire the workers. Taylor felt that it is the exclusive responsibility of the management to do this job. So there must be someone to inspire the workers, because now you have given workers their scientific rules and principles to follow, right? So there must be someone to inspire the workers so that they do not slip back to their earlier methods of soldiering of work and skiving of work, right? So there must be someone to inspire them continuously, and this is the exclusive responsibility of the management. This is nothing but a third principle. He believed that the workers are always willing to cooperate, workers are always willing to cooperate with the management, but there is more opposition from the side of the management. This is what Taylor believed. He believed that workers are always trying to cooperate, but management gives more opposition. Why? Because management thinks that they are superior from the workers. We will see this more detail in future slides. So there is more opposition from the side of the workers is what Taylor believed. Taylor maintained that this process of bringing together causes the mental revolution. This is again we will study in future slides. There is a certain kind of mental revolution that is required both on the side of workers and the management. So Taylor said that this process of bringing together causes the bringing together whom? Bringing together worker and management, because workers are always willing to cooperate and management are always opposing. So Taylor believed that if you bring together worker and management, this causes a kind of mental revolution for both the worker and management. We'll study about this in future slides in detail. So basically this was our third principle. Fourth principle deals with division of work and responsibility between worker and management. There should be proper division of work between worker and management, and also there should be division of responsibility between worker and management. Traditionally, the worker bears the entire responsibility of work and management has lesser responsibility. तो काम करने की सारी responsibility traditionally worker के ऊपर ही थी. Traditionally, worker bears the entire responsibility of work and the management has lesser responsibility. But Taylor emphasized on equal responsibility between worker and management. This division, this equal division of work and responsibility between worker and management results in creates understanding and mutual dependence between them. Instead of conflicts and instead of strikes and instead of disharmony, it creates understanding and mutual dependence between the worker and the management. It also results in elimination of conflicts, strikes and mistrust between them. So this is what our fourth principle deals with. Basically, if you have to summarize these four principles can be summarized as there should be science and not rule of thumb. Rule of thumb are based on tradition and practice and common sense, and scientific rules are based on scientifically derived conclusions and discussions. So there should be science, scientific selection of work, scientific selection of workers, scientifically developed workers, bringing them all together. So there should be science altogether. There should be science and not rule of thumb. Harmony should be there. Harmony between whom? Workers and management. Harmony and not discord. There should be cooperation between whom? Workers and management, and not individualism. Now remember something, this cooperation is between management and workers. Taylor is not talking about cooperation among workers. As we'll see in our future slides, Taylor was totally against the concept of teamwork. He was against the concept of group activity. So this cooperation that he is talking about is the cooperation between workers and management. There should be harmony, not discord. There should be cooperation, not individualism. The manager should not act individually. He is not talking about among workers. Remember this, he is talking about workers and management. There should be maximum output. The basic crux of scientific management is this only, right? Increasing the efficiency, increasing the productivity. Those were the times of second phase of industrial revolution, of mass production. So you have to maximize the output. So there should be maximum output in place of restricted output. Restricted output was the outcome of soldiering of work. So you have to overcome the soldiering of work and you have to attain the maximum output. and other summary is development of each man to his greatest efficiency and prosperity. As we have seen this in our second principle of scientific management, there should be development of each man to his greatest efficiency and prosperity. So what I'll do is I'll stop this lecture here. So second session of Taylor will deal with other important concerns of F.W. Taylor like mental revolution, functional foremanship. So the link for second session is in the description of this video, so go ahead and watch that, and also like, comment and share this video if you like the content. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if you do not want to miss the upcoming sessions. See you soon. Peace out.